Good evening. My name is Professor Keziah Tinkle-Williams, and welcome to Chandler-Gilbert's first Hope and Fears live streaming event, Conversations with Students. I have 5 students who are joining us here today, and I would like to take a moment first to let them introduce themselves to you. First, we have Beyonce Beasley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Beyonce Beasley. I'm a Phoenix native. I attend Chandler-Gilbert Community College, hopefully class of 2021. I'm a sibling of 12, and I got 3 amazing parents, Franz Beasley, Esther Bell, and Anjali.
Thank you, Beyonce. Next, I would like to introduce Jymil Toney. Jymil, can you please introduce yourself for our audience?
Yes, ma'am. So, hello, everyone. My name is Jymil Toney. I'm currently a student at Chandler-Gilbert. My major is business. Last year, I actually graduated with my associates, and I'm just doing some finishing up classes for our transfer. And from Pennsylvania, I'm just happy to be here.
Thank you, Jymil. Next, we have Rita Lugogo. Rita, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Rita Lugogo. I'm a 2020 high school graduate, so I'm going to be transferring to CGCC in the fall. I'm going to be majoring in business finance. I'm a child of 2 immigrant parents. Both my parents were born in Kenya, and I'm really excited for the conversations tonight.
Thank you, Rita. Next, we have Taylor Johnson. Taylor, can you please take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, my name is Taylor. This is my second year at Chandler-Gilbert. I'm an astrophysics and sustainability major, and I'm very honored to be here tonight.
Thank you very much, Taylor. And last, but certainly not least, TJ Taylor.
Thank you. My name is TJ Taylor. I am an industrial engineering major at Chandler-Gilbert. I will be graduating in the spring of 2021. I am from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my overall goal in life is to just be happy. Thank you.
And thank you, Taylor. So this series was created in response to our current situation that is happening in this community in reaction to the incident leading to the death of George Floyd. So we are going to have conversations with current Chandler-Gilbert students about the combination of their hopes and their fears during this pandemic. So students, we're going to begin with our first question. During the pandemic and after the legacy and impact of the murder of George Floyd, what are your fears moving forward?
A lot of my fears at the moment are fear itself. I know it's been hard for me personally to speak out on these issues, but I've met other people where I could speak out with these issues about, and I've met a lot of people that I can talk to about these issues. But I know at first when I saw these things going on, it was really hard to like take everything and comprehend it. I also have a fear of how people, because humans naturally are quick to judge, and I have a fear that people are just going to continue to judge, and I fear that my younger siblings are going to have to experience these issues, and I'm hoping that instead of experiencing them, they'll just have to learn about them. So yeah, thank you.
I can agree with Rita when it comes to fear being one of your fears, because just in general, as a Black person, like there's so many things that happen to us on a daily that you don't know, what could possibly be like something to put you in harm's way when you're just living your regular life. And, having siblings or just a lot of family members, you are concerned for their well-being too, because you want to make sure that they're safe at all times, but you can't always be with them all the time. It's like being a parent when you have younger siblings, even though they already have parents. So I can completely agree with that.
Just to go, agree with that as well. It's just like I'm a sibling of 12. 8 of them are younger. I fear that with, just educating myself and, my younger siblings, the people around me on, just these systemic oppressions and, with current situations going on, I fear it'll like ignite or motivation to retaliate, Um, it's hard to like get my siblings to try, to think to have to teach them how to behave in front of police or, how to act in front of, people who have this myth of white superiority. There's this time where my sibling, two of my siblings and myself, I was 14 at the time, my sister was 15, my sister was 10. We were arrested because we were defending my mom who was being attacked. And, police were called. And my little sister's 10, her thoughts is like, I'm defending my mom, y'all coming to arrest me? No, I'm not going. So she starts fighting. I'm telling her, like, you have to stop fighting. You cannot, like, they can do anything they want to you right now. You sit here and fight, just let it go. And, to try to tell her, oh, don't go and hurt anyone back, or don't have no ill feelings towards anyone when, they're going through this, we're going through this. And, it's currently happening still, like, all around. That's my fear, just, it's going to ignite a motivation.
I really agree with what Teahjah said earlier about how on a day-to-day, she just fears just being alive, being in the world. And that's what I fear mostly, is just that this reality continues to be our current reality in a form into what it always will be. And ultimately, I believe that as people, we just need to be able to change this in a real deep-rooted issue, instead of more just a glossy cover, hashtags or tweets, stuff like that. I feel like we need to really get right into the issue, right into the deep root of it, and change it that way.
I would like to go back to what Beyonce said from when she had her experience with being arrested and telling her sister that, she can't fight back because they can do whatever, the police can do whatever they want to us. And I have a fear of that, of people retaliating also. I feel like things are going to get really bad. I hope not, but I do have that fear. I have a lot of fears for my own family as well. I have a younger brother, but he's very tall, he's very big, and can look very intimidating. If you knew him, you know he wasn't. But I'm just afraid that something is going to happen to him, or happen to my father, or happen to anyone, or even me. And I don't want something like that to happen. And I'm afraid that if something like that does happen, that the government will continue just not to care. And that is, and I'm afraid that they're going to fail us again. And I hope that they don't, but that is one of my fears.
Thank you all for sharing. I wanted to ask you just a few follow-up questions. TJ, you mentioned that you were afraid of living your everyday life. Can you describe a little bit more about that aspect of your experience?
Yeah, so when I say just living every day, I mean like literally I don't know if I could get pulled over and something could happen to me, or something could happen at school and they're targeting Black kids, or just anything. Just living as a Black person, life is already harder. So when you're doing things, you have to be so much more cautious about when and where and how you move around the world, because you don't know what could offend anybody and give them the motive to want to hurt you or put you in harm's way. And that's just something like Like for my brother, he's 17, and the older he gets, the more scared I get for him because we live in a predominantly white area. He goes to a predominantly white school. So, of course, there are going to be kids there who have their own opinions and their own political views or whatever, but I don't want his blackness to be the reason that someone's after him. And I try to like tell him that, you know, they're like, you can't do everything you want to, or you can't be around everybody you want to just because you are Black. You can't talk a certain way and everything. But it's hard for some people to understand, especially my younger siblings, because things don't directly impact them when you're like at mom's house. You know, you have a safe haven, you have somewhere to go, but even home can be somewhere that people can attack you, not necessarily your family, but just people who live in your neighborhood. So it's just, that's what I mean when I'm saying like my day-to-day life. It's just, it's a little scary sometimes, you know?
So
Go ahead.
right, my bad. I can so heavily relate to you, TJ. Like 8 of my siblings are younger than. Just within the last few weeks, I've been pulled over many times. I would get off work at 3:30 in the morning, and during lockdown, you know, we're supposed to be home. But I was pulled over, and you know, it's like comments on my hair as to being, you know, the reason why I'm getting pulled over. It's like I wear a scarf. As soon as I get in the car, I'm taking that mug off. So it's just my fro. So why am I getting pulled over because I got my fro out? What is that like? What does that do? So try to go and, you know, warn my brother who's 13. He's like going through puberty. He's feeling like he's getting all big. You know, he sprouted over me. You know, so to try to tell him just be cool. You know, don't act how you typically would with anyone else. You know, he's not really trying to hear that. He feels, why do I have to act cautious just because like you're a police officer or like you have this power? That's he doesn't feel that's right. It's not, but like it's scary because like our reality is no, you have to be cautious. You can't just, you know, go do you, be a kid, live how you want because, you know, you're a target.
Beyonce, can you elaborate a little bit more about what specifically was said about your hair? I'm still not quite sure how that came up when you were being pulled over.
Initially, it was because I was out during, you know, lockdown hours. But you know, I informed the officer that, you know, I just came from work. You know, I have a note saying that, and then it just kind of to, you know, you don't look like you came from work. I can wear whatever I want, and I took off the vest I typically wear. You don't look like you came from work. Why is your hair all messed up if you came from work? And I told him, you know, I wore a scarf over my head, and this is what I wore to work. It's just like you should not be wearing your hair like that out here. I live in Scottsdale. You know, you shouldn't be wearing your hair like that out here. You know, just keep it to where you guys are. And I'm like, you guys, like, for me, it was one of those points. Am I gonna like try to what does he mean, you guys? What are you talking about? What does my hair have to do with it? Or is it more of a dang, do I want to make it home? Like, will my questions or comments, gestures be something that can get me killed right now? You know, it was just like stupid. Like, basically, how my hair is, what I'm looking like doesn't belong where they are.
And I think that's the interesting piece with this is a lot of times the hopes and fears that we have about our lives aren't tied to basic things like I hope that I can wear my hair naturally without it being a sign of me not belonging where I'm supposed to be, almost inferring that somehow your natural hair is illegal. So that's one of the things that I think is really interesting about what each of you has said. You have all really spoke to the fact that your fear is fear of living life, and your fears are focused on being able to just respond to situations as any person would respond without fear of repercussions or incarceration or something even further. How many of you have siblings? If you could just raise your hand. Everybody has a sibling. Same thing, raise your hand. How many of you are more afraid for your siblings than you are for yourselves? Almost everyone again. So that's one common thread when you were sharing your experiences. As many of you mentioned, a small amount of fears for yourselves going around in just about your daily lives. But a lot of you really emphasized the fear that you had for your younger and older siblings. Is there anyone that would like to start speaking about that aspect of your experience? All right, Rita.
I have a younger sister, an older sister, and two younger brothers. So like Beyonce was saying how she has a younger brother that's 13. I also have a younger brother that's 13. And I try to have these conversations with him, but I don't think he realizes how big of a deal these conversations are because he is also going through puberty and getting all big and tall. So he wants to like show that off. He wants to be confident and proud. He doesn't see himself as he doesn't identify himself as just black. He identifies himself as he's a man, he's smart, he's funny, he has like friends. And I also have another brother that just turned 6 years old. And it's sad that my dad has to teach him how to act in public. And even I went to protests and I saw like little kids there and it's just crazy. I also have an older sister I have a half sister and she's darker than me. And there's issues that she's had to experience that I haven't experienced. There was a time where my mom went into the store and my sister decided to stay in the car and someone came up to her and was wondering, oh, whose car is this? Did you steal this car? And was asking her all these questions just because she was sitting and waiting in the car while my mom was in the store. And I feel like those aren't things that should be okay. Those are not questions that should be asked. And I just thought that was disrespectful. So yeah.
I have like, I guess, it's a heightened fear for my siblings and myself because I feel like I'm in a way teaching them how to not be their full selves, because people are gonna feel like, oh, that isn't right. That's not what we're doing. That's not what we're going to show to the world. And so you can't be your true self. You can only show this part of you, or you can't only show this. You know, you got a big old afro. No, cut it some, shape it up. Nah, I don't like it. And that's scary because me, I'm like, no, be you. You know, that doesn't have to be hateful or harm anyone, but be you. And to think that I'm telling you, during this situation, you can't act this way. During this, if you come across this, your fro showing, put your cap on, something, don't move your hands, don't have your hands in your pocket, all these certain things. It's just like, just normal daily things they do, gestures and so forth. It's just like, no, I'm telling you to like kill that side of you for the time being, just because it's a possibility.
For myself, I am the oldest sibling in my household. So I feel like when you're the oldest of a whole bunch of kids, you mature in a different way or at a different rate than your other siblings would. And you kind of become like another parental figure in their lives, even though they may not see you as that. So like, whenever like I worry about my siblings more than I worry about myself, because I know that there are certain things that they may or may not do that I know like you're not supposed to do, or like they just don't know everything that I know. Because I think like my dad a little bit. I think a little bit more on the mature side. Like I'm always thinking about the next thing instead of like right now or like a couple seconds ago. I'm thinking about the future, and they don't do certain things. So of course you're more scared for them when you are the oldest, or just a sibling in general. And like my youngest two siblings are twins. One's a boy and one's a girl. Their names are Nazir and Nala, and they're only 4. So like for them, I'm always so scared of like what's it gonna be like when they turn 16? Because we're going through all this stuff now, and that's in 12 years. What's the world gonna look like in 12 years for them? Or when are we gonna have to start explaining Trayvon Martin's and Tamir Rice's to them? I don't want to have to tell them that when they're 6 and 7. I want them to be able to feel like they can be a free Black kid all the time. But sometimes that's not the reality. Or like even in our little neighborhood, like the people across the street let their kids just go outside sometimes with nobody watching them. And I'm like, no, we need to know where they are all the time. And which way around the corner did you turn? Do you got your bike outside? Don't go too fast. Like, you always want to be there for them and make sure that they're okay, but you can't do that all the time.
I definitely can relate to what Beyonce and Rita did earlier. Oh, you want to go, Taylor? It's okay. Okay. So yeah, I can definitely relate to what they were saying earlier, just about, their dads teaching them how to act in public, or their brother, I'm sorry, act in public, or how just something along those lines. Because when I was brought up, my dad definitely told us and taught us, don't wear a do-rag outside, don't have a hoodie on outside, especially when you're driving, take it off. Not because he doesn't appreciate our blackness, but because he wants us to make it home. He doesn't want the people outside to see us as threats. So yeah, that's exactly what I gotta say.
I would say that I agree with TJ with when you're the oldest sibling out of all your siblings, you feel this kind of responsibility to look after them. And so I am half black and half white. I was raised by my mother, who is white, and she couldn't teach us those things because she had not experienced those things, and so she doesn't know the kind of issues that Black people would experience on a daily basis. And I kind of had to just experience that on my own throughout school and just throughout life. I was, when I moved to the South, I moved to Florida. I'm originally from Chicago. I moved to Florida when I was younger with my family. And I hadn't experienced anything in Chicago that made me feel different. When I moved to Florida, that's when I started to feel very different. And I grew up with my half brother, who's also half Black and half white. And he experienced those things as well, but not until he got to about middle school. And we're only about 4 years apart in age. And so I couldn't really explain to him what was going on because I wasn't sure what was going on at the time. So we kind of had to just figure that out together. But now he's a very tall, very big, half Black man who's living in Tennessee. And so I fear for him daily. And I know you're not supposed to make it, but I've been to Tennessee, I've experienced Tennessee, and it's not somewhere that I want him to be. So I fear that every day, all the time. And I already lost a brother, and I really don't want to lose another one, especially to something like racial violence. And I think that's ridiculous that we have to still worry about that in the year 2020.
I think that as Black women, we always fear more for our boys, our fathers, our brothers, because we know what the world does to them, and we know that at home you're safe with us. But we know, Black boys are just such a threat to the rest of the world, even when they're doing nothing. Even when you're just naturally a husky, buff guy, people automatically look at you as a threat. So we want to protect our Black boys more than we protect ourselves. We always put ourselves at the forefront when it comes to almost anything for Black people, because we know we have it better as Black women. And of course we may get hurt, but it won't be to the extent that our brothers and our fathers will, So I feel like that, our boys are always so important to us to protect first before anything. And we teach them things differently so that we know that they can get home. Like Jymil was saying about, driving and not wearing a hoodie. Teaching my brother, or even myself and my sister, my parents teaching us, when you get pulled over, have your ID and your license registration already ready so you don't have to get it out. And my brother's starting to drive soon. So making sure he's okay. He knows, don't have the music too loud all the time. Even though that might be nothing serious to him, it's something serious to me and my mom, because we know that if you can get pulled over just for being Black and listening to music. but that might not be a big deal to him.
And thank you for sharing that, TJ. One of the things that we try to teach our boys as a mother of 4 boys is that I look at you and I see a child, I look at you and I see a young man, other people look at you and they see a threat. And I think that's something that we are speaking to, is that we have an issue with systemic racism in America, with Black boys being seen as a threat. And I tell them, you're not going to be seen necessarily as an individual when you're walking throughout the neighborhood. You're going to be seen as someone who fits the description. And so I think all of you are right in sharing that. I feel that as Black women, we feel this protective need to protect our Black males. But I also feel like there is hope for the future. TJ, I know specifically you talked about envisioning what the world would be like for your sibling in 12 years. And I wanted to just ask you all, what do you envision for your future? So if this is where we are now, this isn't where any of us imagined we would be in 2020. What do you envision for your future and the futures of your loved ones that you have been talking about today?
I feel like envisioning the future is something that is so hard to do because we've been in this one position as Black people for so long. And like we've made progression, but the progression may seem like a lot to us, but it's so little, throughout the history of ourselves. So I feel like for the future for my siblings, even though it's only 12 years may seem like a lot to some people, but it's really not that much time. I'm at least hoping that for them, when they get older, it won't be such a thing to see, hashtags on Instagram of someone dying and like getting them justice. I hope that justice is just something that comes along with deaths that are done with what's this word I'm looking for? Police brutality, or things that, like, when people die the wrong way. I hope that you're just being Black and dying. You're not just like, oh, well, let's just throw you in the dust. There's justice that comes along with that naturally, That's just one thing that I hope for.
I'm hoping that more Black history. Sorry. I hope.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I hope that more Black history will hopefully be taught in the future, because I know I went to like a mostly white school and they didn't teach a lot of Black history. I know some schools have Black history classes, but mine did not. And now I'm starting to do a lot more research on my own, and I'm starting to find out a lot more that I didn't know before. That's really upsetting. And I feel like in schools especially, because getting equality for all people is going to be really hard, because we're the outcome of the decisions our ancestors made. Like, you know what I mean? So we have to work really hard in order to reverse all that stuff, because all these things are really hard to reverse, all these issues that are going on. But I think one big step that can be taken is just educating more on these issues, especially starting at a younger age. And yeah, I think that'd be a better.
So I just wanted to say that I agree with TJ's point and with Rita's point. I'm going to go to TJ's point really quick. I think that it is hard for us to envision the future in a positive way. I think because, like she said, Black people have been through this so many times before. And it feels like the government always finds a way, or at least the people within the government always find a way to keep suppressing us, to keep us down just all the time. Because honestly, my hopes for the future are actually really high expectations. Like, we need to, completely ban privatized prisons, because that is, of course, just without privatized prisons, the Black community is disproportionately targeted. And then I feel like, hate groups like the KKK, they need to be named as terrorist organizations. and things like that. So, and it's sad to say that those are high expectations because they're really not, but for the government and for the country and what they've done in the past and what they've shown us, it is a high expectation for them. I also want to touch on Rita's point, and she was saying that, they don't teach Black history in school. And it makes me very upset that they don't teach it in school also, because like I said, I'm half Black and half white. And when I was growing up, I had to, I was raised with my white mother. So she wasn't, she taught me the basic things, Martin Luther King, all that stuff. But I had to find out the real dirty stuff, the real stuff that we should really, the other stuff that we should really be learning on my own. And it's when you read that kind of stuff and you see that kind of stuff, you think to yourself, why are they not teaching this in school? Because we, as Black children, need to learn this kind of stuff. And I just think that's ridiculous. And I really hope in the future that we can teach that to younger Black children, the things that they need to know, instead of just whitewashing everything.
To kind of add to that, I too envision, just this education that's not diluted, watered down, and tried to kind of paint this, beautiful picture of the past and, the issues that are going on. With that though, I feel like for anything to really change, it needs to become a priority to society, I feel, to address mental health. As a Black person, I come from a Black family, we don't really go to doctors. If I needed a sports physical, okay, we'll go to the doctor. But I seen literally, my mom birthed 8 kids, and I've seen her through labor. She literally stayed away from the hospital, went through the labor at home as long as she could, just so she didn't have to go to the hospital. And then mental health was not even talked about, brought up, or nothing really in my family, and it's something that I struggle with. So just an address mental health being addressed, so that what's learned can then we can just change. Actually, the education can then prompt a change.
I feel like everybody pretty much touched on the main thing, for me at least, was, basically education, whether that's being educated in mental health, being educated in the schools. I feel like in order to see progress, we need to totally understand our history. We need to be able to understand where we came from, what happened in the past, and that'll be able to help us move forward, as well as education of now, which I believe the best education to get right now is college education, whether that is you studying business or whatever field you want to get into, being able to change your world and change the world around you in a better way. So yeah, for me, the progress that I want to see is basically not a glossed over, like I said earlier, picture of we just love each other, but nothing has changed. I want to see more Black people up with power, more Black people making a voice, making change in the world. And until we do so, I don't feel like we'll see real progress in the world that we live in.
Again, thank you all for sharing. A few of you mentioned the importance of education and mental health in the future that you envisioned. And I definitely believe that Black history is American history, and that until we marry this idea and give a more complete and accurate representation of this nation's history, we won't truly quite be one nation. The other thing is, I think that during this time especially, mental health is probably something that everyone needs to have as their number one priority. Everyone is struggling in some way, shape, or form, and some are coping better than others with having to deal with both the hardships, medical, economic hardships of a pandemic, but then also all of the civil unrest that is going on in the wake of George Floyd's murder. So I want to ask you, what is bringing you comfort or healing during this tumultuous time?
I think right now for me mostly is I'm able to have conversations with my parents because I know, like I said, with Trayvon Martin, when all that happened, I couldn't have those conversations with my parents. But now I've gone to the age where I understand the issues that are going on. And especially with the pandemic that's going on at the same time, I feel like a lot more people have more free time and a lot of time on their hands. So they're taking this time to educate themselves. And it's all over social media, so you can't really ignore the issues anymore. So since everyone is on their phones because of the pandemic, these issues are there. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I agree with Rita's point on she's able to talk to her parents. I am, my father came back into my life years ago, and we actually live about 5 minutes away from each other now. And so it's nice to be able to have those conversations with him and the rest of the Black side of my family. It's nice to have those conversations and be able to speak to somebody who relates to that within your own family. I also want to say that something that gives me some comfort is that there are some political leaders that are trying to make somewhat of a difference, like the Minneapolis City Council, who decided to put a plan in place to disband the Minneapolis Police Department and replace it with community-led policing, which has been proven to work better according to the I forget who it is. I think it's the National Academy of Sciences. And so that gives me comfort that there are political leaders who are at least trying something and trying something new. That's that's great. And then something that helps me heal, something that gives me healing is just unplugging for a little bit, just taking mental breaks and keeping the issues in the back of your mind or the back of my mind, but also keeping my mental health at the forefront. Just try to relax and not take in any of that stuff just for a little while, so I can almost like a battery recharge.
For me right now, what's bringing me comfort and healing is kind of just keeping my mental psyche at a forefront, and being with siblings and kind of letting them see my process. Attending to my mental health is like something super new to me. When I was younger, we just literally didn't talk about it, like nothing. It wasn't until I met my mom, actually. I guess it's probably the doctor, where she started, pointing out, different mental health issues. And I'm like, oh, that's really what's going on with me. So, kind of identifying, what I need in that moment, what I'm doing to kind of sustain just a stable mental health status. And seeing like my younger siblings, even my older siblings, do the same thing. That's what's really like, let's journal together, journal something that we love to do, let's journal together. When I see my little sister going, I'm going to just go take this walk, that really brings me, okay, not only am I like getting myself together is good for me, but it's good for them as well. And it kind of helps with being at home more during the pandemic. So yeah, that's
what's for me, I think one of the big things, and probably for a lot of us, is just being with our families, because you know that you're safe at home and you have people who love you and care about you around you. So that's one thing that's keeping me comfortable. But I don't think that as Black people as a whole, we will be able to heal until things are actually done and put in order for us to naturally be successful in life instead of having to fully struggle through life before we become successful. So like, you know, getting reparations or not having to have public school education when kids who live in Gilbert or, you know, they don't get the same education as kids in Phoenix. It's completely different. So until things are put in position to where we're not treated as lesser of a person and a group, and not even just for us, but just for people of color in general, then I feel like we'll be able to start healing more as a community.
What's bringing me comfort is no different from everybody else. I feel like my family is my main source of comfort and healing. Touching on the mental health, I've been recently starting to see a therapist, and I feel like that's worked very well for me, just being able to get my thoughts out in some other form other than having a journal, just, you know, being able to bounce ideas off of somebody, you know, that's really caring and really listening. Being able to just go out on walks with my parents or my mom and being able to do all these things that just take my mind off of things because there's so much going on, but also seeing all the allies that we have online, all these people that are standing with us. This is not just America's issue. This is a worldwide issue along with everything else. So seeing how everybody cares really shows that we can do something. We can make a positive change. So that's what's bringing me comfort right now.
Thank you all for sharing your experience. And I absolutely agree. Every single time I am faced with a negative situation in life, I try to remember the fact that positives come from negatives. So, for example, I like to think of the Tuskegee experiment. Many of you are familiar, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment was horrendous in that African Americans were either denied treatment or given placebo, or in some cases, actually injected with the disease in order to track its progression. But as a result of that negative experience, it completely changed the face of the way that experiments are conducted in America. It helped establish the APA Code of Ethics. Everyone that studies the Code of Ethics or studies psychology learns about the Tuskegee experiment, learns about how it's an example of what not to do. And so, although that was a horrific moment in American history, a lot of great came from that. A lot of progress came from that negativity. So I want to ask you as our final question before we take some questions from the audience, what are your hopes of what positive things are going to come from this negative experience, with the final straw being the murder of George Floyd and all of the protests that we're seeing around the nation? What is your hope for the phoenix of positivity that is going to raise out of this negativity that we are currently living within?
My hopes is just, again, education. I don't feel like, all police are bad. For the most part, my experience with police are good. I have a huge interest in law enforcement. And with that, I took a law enforcement program at Cabot. I worked in public safety at Chandler-Gilbert. So I kind of am able to, you know, get a sense of what, their job duties entail, and kind of can separate it from, some of the police that, take advantage of their title and, abuse their power. Um, I just hope that, uh, we can see that ultimately. I feel like it's the systems that are like messed up, not necessarily the individual police. Because it can be one police officer that, just goes and kill, a black dude just because. And because that one police is like on a team, of course, like the brothers and sisters in blue have to kind of come to his side and see what's going on. Just break it down, you know, the structures of the way, police work, and just educating everyone on like the systems that powers, even police themselves. That's important, and that could, I would hope, just makes a bigger impact.
Some of my hopes are, I want to speak out on social and economical issues because I feel like right now we're speaking out on a lot of social issues, but there's also a lot of economical issues that the Black communities have to experience. I also hope that we start to see Blackness as something powerful and we start to like really use that to our advantage. Because like I went to Kenya because my parents were born in Kenya, and in Kenya everyone's proud to be Black because everyone is Black. You're not judged based off of the color of your skin. So I'm hoping right now to like teach the younger generations, especially, to be proud that you're Black and to see Black people can be successful. Because right now, I just found out Beethoven was Black. Like, I was not aware, like, Black people can be successful, I guess. And I just feel like people should express their Blackness and be proud of it. And I also think we should try having conversations with the older generations because I think the older generations have a big effect on the younger generations. And yeah, I think if you have those conversations, you can't change someone's point of view because they've thought that way for so long. But I think trying to open them up and just educate them more, because I feel like a lot of people have these views because of how they were raised. But a lot of people choose not to educate themselves on what's going on. A lot of people don't see what they're doing as wrong because that's what they grew up based off of. And I think it's just important to teach people that these things are not, like some of the things that are happening are not okay. So, yeah.
Like Rita said, a lot of what we learn in our life starts at home. So I feel like educating ourselves at home first will help us grow in our future, just knowing about ourselves and our history and everything, and then hopefully being able to take that further into different communities and then wanting to engage. So like this past spring semester, I am the president of Black Student Union, and I did a lot of events during Black History Month, and just hoping that a lot of our non-Black students would want to come and, learn about us and our history. It was nice to see that a lot of people came out. So hopefully, in the future, in our communities, we have all these allies that we see on social media, but I hope that we'll be able to see them in real life too, and not just over the computer screen, they're by our side.
I really wanted to touch on what Dr. Tinkle said and about how sad this Tuskegee experiment was, about how it was at the expense of so many Black lives. And I feel like that's just predicated to what happens in America and how it was built on so many Black lives. And that what I hope for the future is that we get to give back, or America will give back to these Black lives and be able to build upon it even further.
One of my hopes too is that people that are speaking on these issues actually go out and vote and make differences. Because I have a lot of people that are speaking on these issues, but they haven't even registered to vote, or they don't even know who the candidates are, which I think is really crazy. So I'm hoping that people actually use their advantages, especially us, because we're like young, Black, and educated. There's a lot of people that are not educated. And the fact that we have the opportunity to educate ourselves, I think we should go out and use that and educate other people as well. Yeah.
I'm going to agree with Rita. I think that people that are speaking out about this, they absolutely should go out and vote. And I'm in the same situation. I know a lot of people that speak out about this kind of stuff, and they're really passionate, but they're not registered to vote. And I'm like, please, you have to. I know you can convince yourself very easily that your vote doesn't count. And with the last election, we could, but anyway, it's very important to vote. And that's what our country was built on. And that's what we should do. It's just when we don't like somebody else it. Another hope of mine is that I hope that we can, it's like I said, it's a very high expectation because you can't totally get rid of racism. But I hope that we can at least eradicate racism out of our governmental systems and within our society. I really hope that I would really hope that the government would come out and say that racism doesn't have a place in this society. And I feel like if we had maybe a president say that people would be, more ashamed to think that way. Because honestly, if you do think that way, I feel like you should be ashamed to think that way. But I hope that soon or in the future or before I die, that we can see racism, systemic racism, all of that die down significantly, if not totally eradicated. That would be wonderful.
Thank you all for sharing, and I share your hopes. I hope in the future that we do see the end of all of the isms, racism, sexism, homophobia, and the list that goes on and on. So I want to thank you for sharing your answers to the questions that you were aware of before we began. And now I actually want to take some questions from the audience. So go ahead, take a deep breath, and get ready for your next wave of questions. Our first one is actually for you, Jymil. The question is, are your white peers or friends conscious that you have to be more intentional about how you leave the house and how you act in public?
I say it's hard in today's world to not be conscious of it because it's just so prevalent in everything that we do. I feel like the way I represent myself and present myself into the world, I let them know that I won't stand for any, nonsense, anything of that sort. So they understand that, we can't be this way around him. If we want to be this way, we got to do it on our own time, because I don't want to be caught up in something that is negative for my future. But I never bring it up with my white peers. I just always assume that it's always there. But that's something I could definitely look forward to in the future, being able to have that conversation, being able to tell them, hey, I'm Black, and this is what happens to people that are Black. I'm sure you know about this, but let's try to do something to help. Let's try to do something more positive if negative things do arise.
And Jymil, I feel like your peers might learn a lot from those conversations because we don't know what we don't know, right? That's why it's something that we don't know. So they might actually learn a lot from those conversations, because even though hearing your stories won't necessarily put them in your shoes, it will give them a much better idea of what it may be actually like when you walk in them. So I think that those are conversations that really could be meaningful for both you and your peers. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Our next question is for Taylor and Teahjah. You are two Black females majoring in STEM fields. How do you see STEM benefiting from hiring a more diverse workforce?
I think that STEM in general.
I think that, go ahead, Teahjah.
Sorry, can you say the question one more time?
I can. So, you are a Black female majoring in a STEM field. How do you see STEM benefiting from hiring a more diverse workforce?
I think that STEM hiring a more diverse workforce will be able to bring in opinions and different sides of the story from different types of people, so that when we are moving forward in the future, whether they're in engineering or people are teachers or whatever it may be, you know how to approach all different types of situations, all different types of people. And it's not just like, oh, well, we're used to working with people who live in this type of area, or we're used to people working with people who do this. Instead, you're like, okay, we have a broad spectrum. We can work with anybody. We can approach any situation from any angle and do it in a respectful manner, in a way that everybody's going to feel comfortable. I'm not going to make anybody feel uncomfortable. So I think that for me, generally, I've always been a person where I kind of get along with everybody, and I know how to move around different types of groups of people. And for someone to hire me, that's what they'll be getting is someone who you won't have to worry about your customers or where you put me, what position you put me in. I'll just be able to work with anybody and make sure that they're at their most comfortable whenever they do work with me.
I would also have to say that I do agree with TJ's point. I think it could bring, a different voice into the field. I think it could, I'm the same way, very adaptive. So no matter who you put me with, I feel like I can always get along with somebody. But I think another benefit of hiring diverse people in the STEM field is the investment in other communities. So for me, for example, I want to be able to get into sustainable engineering, and I feel like the places where I would want to go is places like my old neighborhood, communities of color, Black communities, low-income communities, because they need to be invested in. And hopefully, if I have my business one day, I would love to invest into those communities. Because, sorry, I was getting to my next point. So my next point was that environmental injustice, so environmental problems, they impact the low income communities the most, and communities of color. The NAACP says that race plays the number one part in determining where to put these toxic facilities. And so I think that putting diversity into the STEM industry could really help slow that down or take that out and bring in sustainability, biodiversity, and less chance of toxic waste facility.
Thank you, TJ and Taylor. Our next question is for all 5 of you. Have you experienced having African American teachers or teachers of color, and were there any benefits? So 2 parts. Have you experienced having African American teachers or teachers of color? And if so, were there any benefits?
I did not experience my first African American teacher until I attended my first year at Chandler-Gilbert Community College. It was super heart-filling to go into a classroom and see someone about to teach me who looks like me. It was like motivation for me. Like, I would want to skip to class because, like, oh my gosh, a Black woman is going to teach me. Like, my whole life going through school, I've never seen a Black person, man or female, teach me, and now I get to experience it, just to be able to go into a classroom with a new hairstyle and not have, my teacher question it, like, is that like extra hair in your head, or like, oh, you dyed your hair? Like, how do you do that? Like, if I have beads in my hair, do you like take them down every night? Like, to not have someone educate me, a teacher, professor, ask that question was just super cool. The experience was dope. It just makes me like, oh my gosh, imagine if there was more color, not just Black, just more color, and just all these different areas where, youth are taught. It would just, overall just be dope.
I had my first Black teacher when I was in 7th grade, and he was my English teacher. And it was the best thing. Like, all of me and my friends, I went to a predominantly white school. Of course, all the Black kids there knew each other, and all of us were so excited. We're all in the same class. But from that class, even though it was English class, that was the first time I learned about Emmett Till. And it was so eye-opening because you're like 12 years old and you're like, people do these things to young people. So that's when I first started becoming not necessarily more aware of being Black, but more aware of the things that can happen to you because you're Black. And having that first teacher in middle school, it made my middle school experience a lot better because, me and my friends didn't feel like we were always being attacked, or if we were, we had our teacher around the corner and he would just look at us like, hey, like, it felt good to have like a safe space at school and not like go to the principal's office. If we ever got in trouble or something, we'd be like, okay, I'm just gonna go talk to Mr. Henry. And even after having him in 7th grade, throughout our high school experience, and even now, like while I'm in college, I can still call him and text him and just, talk to him about life or talk to him about school or anything. And it was a really good experience. I feel like having teachers at a more younger age, if people could have them in like, kindergarten or an elementary school somewhere, it's really good to see that, because then you're like more aware of yourself in certain spaces, and you just feel good about yourself while you're learning.
I never had Black teachers, but I had freshman through sophomore year, I had a Black counselor. And that was really good because not only could I talk to her about like the issues that were going on, but I could talk to her about my mental issues. And I think that was really good. She unfortunately left my beginning of senior year, so I didn't really go to the counselor anymore. But it was really nice having her freshman through junior year. I also had Black security guards at my school, which weren't just security guards to me. Those were like friends that I would have conversations with. Even during the pandemic, when I went to pick up my cap and gown, those were the people that I was most excited to see. And having conversations like that with them was really nice. I wish I had Black teachers though, so I'm excited, hopefully at CGCC.
My first Black teacher was my 2nd year of college, and it was my spring semester. It was my psych teacher. And I didn't get to stay for the whole semester because I had some issues come up in the middle of the semester. But from what I did get from him was so enlightening, being able to be taught by a Black man. And he's from Chicago, and my dad lives in Chicago, so we had something to connect on. And, just being in a classroom where I felt like it was more home than just a book and tables, and I'm just getting lectured at. I'm having a real experience with him. But outside of that, I've always had Black coaches, and I feel like they really shaped me to be who I am, being able to be, humble, being generous, all of these things that I present myself out, started from my father, started from these coaches, and, it all just came out when I saw that psych teacher, so.
Taylor, would you like to share?
Oh, okay. My mic is working now. So I did have my first Black teacher. I was in 6th grade, and she was my math teacher, and she was a lot of fun. I remember having a lot of personal conversations with her. She was just very open and very also very eccentric, but I do remember her being one of
Taylor, I think we may have lost you again. So we'll give you a moment. If you do end up coming back on with your microphone working, we can let you go ahead and finish answering that question. This question was particularly meaningful for me because I did not have any Black teachers when I was in school. So when I set out to go to college, what I wanted to do was become the teacher that I never had. So it warms my heart that all of you, in some respect, got to have an experience with having those Black teachers or those Black counselors when you were growing up, because that was something that I did not have access to. We have another question. Again, this is for all of you. Question 2, what would you say to the non-Black, white, Hispanic, Native, Asian allies joining the push for social justice? So what do you say, or what would you say to non-Black allies, meaning white, Hispanic, Native, or Asian, joining in the push for social justice?
What I would say is, if you're in this, you have to be in this for the long haul. This is not something that's only going to be for 1, 2 weeks, 2 or 3 months. This is going to be a long ride. And just as much as you are an ally for us, we are also an ally for you. I feel like Black people are some of the most welcoming people that you will ever bring into your life if you have met any, or even if you're just associated with us anyway. We're just very open, loving people. So if you love us, we will send that energy back to you. And you just got to be here for the whole ride. You can't be here for half the ride,
I'm hoping that people realize the privileges they have, because I feel like those privileges, especially if they're allies, can help us a lot. Because I think other white people talking to white people about the issues will help a lot, because people seem to listen more to people that they can relate to. Yeah.
I was going to say that I think that I would agree with TJ. I would say that, we have your back too. Like, we are your allies as well, because we know that those allies also need to fight for their rights and fight for the injustices that they've experienced. And I, for one, am completely behind them. And I think that the Black community would also be behind them as well. Oh, and thank you.
I would say, to go on what TJ and Taylor was saying, give it all you got. If you rocking with us, or not, stay where you at, because this isn't just a quick fix that's going to happen. It's been 400+ years of these issues going on, so it's not just going to change overnight. And with that, use your voice, use the power you do have to bring light on the situations and these issues, but also, don't try to temper how I feel. Don't try to tell me how to feel when I'm, dealing with these issues, because I don't think that's cool. Can you see it? And you can have your feelings too and your emotions too, but just because you're having those, you still don't know what it's like to be going to be. So don't try to tell me how I feel, or tell me that how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking is wrong.
I'll say that everybody pretty much hit it on the head, that basically everybody's going, well, you want to be an ally, we got to stick through it and be in here for the long haul. Also, for other non-Black allies like Hispanics or Native Americans, we understand that you're fighting your own battles and that we're here with you and that we want to stand by your side as long as you stand with ours. So ultimately, I see no need, or what was the question again? I'm sorry to ramble.
The question was, what would you say to the non-Black allies joining the push for social justice? So exactly who you were speaking to, white, Hispanic, Native, Asian. What would you say to them joining the fight? And I think you're all saying the same thing. In the Navy, we had a term, all hands on deck. That means that if there's a certain crisis situation, everyone had to just drop what they were doing and go to the deck to help with whatever the situation was. So, I mean, I think what you're all saying is that even though this particular brand of racism might be directed at us, that something like systemic racism is an issue that should be all hands on deck. Yes, all Americans need to actively be fighting the systemic racism that we have that's pervasive in this culture. I think, Jymil, that's what you were speaking to.
Yes, ma'am.
We have another question.
Can I say something real quick?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
I would just also want to say, educate yourself as much as possible. Ask questions, just be very open. Like, if someone was to ask me a question and you're just not sure about it, I won't be offended, So just go out there, educate yourself, but also don't feel like you know more about me than I know about myself, because then that's like overstepping the line. Yeah, but just be very open, learn, ask questions.
And I would say, except for don't ask to touch my hair. Except for that question. Don't ask that question. This question is for anyone on the panel. What can educators do to walk alongside you in this new stage of American history? So, what can educators do to walk alongside you as we usher in this new age of American history?
I would say be as supportive as possible. For my household, I am a first generation student. So a lot of people who are first generation students to go to, whether it's 2-year college or 4-year college, that's not an idea that's normal in their household. So they don't know how to study. They don't know how to take a whole load of classes and do their homework on time and whatever it may be. Just be as supportive as possible and try to help them be successful in your class. Not just because, like how you would want your own kids to be successful. That's how I would want you to help me to be successful. Show me all the resources that you have, everything.
To just add on to what TJ said, yeah, for me, like, show me like you supporting me, even if like I got a educator that's, can't relate to anything of what I'm going through, just create a space. So that I know that yeah, I know you're going through these things. No, I don't know how you feel, and I may not even have the words, but just know I know, and what can I do? I think it's also important to educators that also go through these things to just help. Like it would help, like my mom, when I'm turning about certain things, she just helps me, get my words together. So what I'm saying doesn't, come off like, I'm hateful or just my intention to get misinterpreted. When I'm trying to speak up about what I'm feeling in these issues. Another thing too is like I feel like once as an educator, once like the real history, don't continue to teach the diluted story, the diluted version, the watered down, packaged, rebranded, sold back information that's given through the education system.
I think it's important as educators to build some type of relationship with your students so they feel comfortable enough to come and have conversations with you out of what you're learning in the class. Because like we see our teachers more than we see our parents at home, we're at school more than we're at home. So I think it's important to be able to have those conversations with those teachers, even if they don't understand. Because I know I look up to a lot of my teachers and I have conversations with my teachers, but it'd be nice for them to educate themselves, even if they don't understand the issues, but to educate themselves on the issues, just so you're able to have those little conversations or just have someone to talk to.
I'll say to add on that, not just be educated, but also give us your story. Tell us how you feel about what's going on in the world. Let it be an open conversation that we can have, whether that's outside of class or during class. Let us know that not only that you support us, but that you're here for us, that you're able to make it a place where we can be and feel comfortable at.
I think it's also very important to, like, as an educator, to point out ignorance, because I've had experiences in the classroom where there's been blatant ignorance pointed towards me, depending on like my race or my gender or my religion. And I think it's important to not let those students get away with those issues, because you need to let them know that those are not okay. Like those things are not okay. Yeah, it'd just be nice for your teachers to stand up for you. Your teachers doesn't have to like every student in the class, you know what I mean?
Rita, I was just actually about to make that point. I was just about to say it would be helpful if educators could make sure that their classroom is a safe space for everybody, and being a Black student, and there are other students of color. And I would also agree with everybody else that being supportive by increasing your knowledge, that would also, be a step in the right direction.
Can
Thank
I
you
say
all.
something about the last
Absolutely.
question real quick?
Absolutely.
About
Go ahead.
being an ally. And when I said educate yourself, also educate your children, teach your children, raise them in a way that they're not going to grow up and be racist, or they're not going to have certain biases towards people, because I think a lot of the things that we grow up and learn, or kids grow up and learn, are just like blindly taught to them and they don't even know that they're learning them. So, try to be as diverse as possible in your household. Buy your kids books that don't just have white kids in them. Buy books with Black kids and Hispanic kids in them. Have different colored children everywhere, or different languages. Just be more inclusive when it comes to also raising your kids and not just teaching yourself, so that when your kids grow up, they don't have to learn all this stuff because they already know.
Well said, TJ. This next question is for Rita. Rita, as a 2020 high school graduate entering your first year at Chandler-Gilbert Community College in the fall, how would you like your college experience to differ from your high school experience?
I personally want to have conversations with Black people. Okay, because I don't know if I'm allowed to say my high school, but I went to Basha High School, and there's not very many Black students at Basha High School. We had a Black student union, but it wasn't even run by a Black teacher. So that's why I'm saying, like, I wish I could have. I'm hoping to go to Chandler-Gilbert and have like Black people and Black teachers, and I feel very motivated towards like the whole cause. Like right now, a lot of my friends are non-Black, and so I can't have conversations with them. I have conversations with them, but like you said, they can't completely understand. But I'm just really excited for college because you can really like focus on what you want to do, especially since I'm turning 18 in a month, so I can take stands and like do things on my own. I don't need my parents to tell me to push me to do things. I can do things on my own. I don't need. So I'm just really excited. Okay, sorry.
Well, I hope that you remain excited as we navigate virtual classroom experiences. So, Rita, I teach 4 or 5 different classes at Chandler-Gilbert. My husband, Dr. Williams, he teaches 3 or 4. You can take many African American teachers at Chandler-Gilbert, from English to history to mythology to technical writing to we have STEM, engineering, psychology. So we thankfully have a cornucopia of Black teachers at Chandler-Gilbert for you to be able to sample and learn from and enjoy. Next question is for everyone. Aside from participating on this panel, what type of activism have you participated in? So aside from participating in this panel, what other types of activism have you participated in during this time?
I have not been to any protests just because of, not wanting to get sick, but you definitely can sign petitions, you can donate to Black organizations out there with all this stuff going on. There are so many, especially in your own city or in different cities, or just national organizations that you can donate to. You can also just be vocal online and show that you are supporting, because sometimes silence is your biggest enemy. You're not saying anything, so how do I know that you're actually helping?
I've been out to protests. Me and Beyonce went to the same protest. That was a really fun protest. I even got a chance to chant and get the megaphone in the front of the line, and it felt really good because it's one thing when you're in your home talking to people over the phone, but it's another thing when you're out there like really like doing things. It just feels so much better. And I've also had conversations with other non-Black people, because I feel like a lot of people are blatantly ignorant, especially on social media now, because there's nothing really to hide. Everything's out there now. And I think a lot of people don't realize the things that they're posting and a lot of the things that they're saying. So I think it's really important to educate those people, because I know there's been a few people that I've had to educate, and a few friends that I wasn't aware that they even thought that way, and you've had to educate them. It's just, yeah.
I want to say you did your thing on that megaphone. But for me, going out to protest, lot has been just educating myself a lot, just literally ordering my books and just like really diving into all Google searches. Because for me, I didn't pull out like experience racism. Like it was not until, I don't know, maybe like 3 years ago, the first time I'm like, oh god damn, what? So that's not something I too much have to worry about. But also, and then I always take a stance if like, I don't know, a white person comes up to me, asks me a question, I had a stance like, I'm not telling you, your ancestors had museums and all kind of things to learn Black people, straight up. Like, so why am I still having to be responsible for educating you on this? Like, that's no. But I not feeling that way no more, because it's just like, again, they may not know, especially if they, go to school, they come up, they don't see the real of how history was. They could think, oh, these cute little concentration camps, we'll feed them and they'll be playing games and, things like that. But, that's not how it went. So, educating myself and then spreading what I'm learning to others is
Taylor, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and say something. I would say that what I have been doing is also just educating myself a little bit on some things that I didn't know about, like influential Black people that I wanted to get to know about a little bit more. I actually want to start reading. If Beale Street Could Talk, I want to read the book. I saw the movie, but now I want to read the book. I also have been, just spreading out information, things that I learned, but I've been donating money where I can, just to the bail funds, to community food funds and things like that, signing petitions where I can, and the only reason I haven't gone out to protest is because I don't have the greatest immune system. I get sick very easily, so I've been trying to just totally.
you did.
Jymil, would you like to answer the question? I believe we lost Taylor again.
Yeah, no problem. So what I've been doing lately was I have been protesting. So I participated in a protest that was held by my alumni high school, Desert Vista, and partnered with the other school in my area, Mountain Point. So we marched from Mountain Point to Desert Vista, and I felt like it was a great turnout. We had like 100, 150 people. Most people were wearing masks, can't control everybody, but it was a great thing to do. I also feel like I've been educating myself more. I'm not really one to watch the news as often, so what I've been doing that now is like a big step for me, as well as just planning for the future. Like I feel like I want to be involved in more boards. So being involved in like the HOA in my future neighborhood, or being involved in like as a parent of my student or my child's school career, just being able to have more input out there in the world.
Taylor, are you able to respond?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. And did you get any of my response, or just none of it at all?
We just heard the beginning of your response.
Okay. So what I was saying is, basically, I've just been educating myself, also looking into the influential Black people that I want to get to know more about. And I've been spreading information about that. I have also been donating money where I can to like community food funds, to bail funds for the protesters, and signing petitions that I think are worth signing also. And I haven't been able to protest because I get sick very easily. I don't have a very healthy immune system. So I've been just kind of closing myself in. But yeah, that's what I've been doing in place of actually protesting.
And Taylor, there are multiple forms of protest. I also have a compromised immune system, so I can't be out there protesting, but I channel it through artwork. And my form of protest is living well and being the change that I want to see in the world. And I think that's the same thing for all of you too. So I want to thank you for joining me tonight. I want to thank the audience for joining us tonight. We brought up a lot of difficult issues today. I want to make sure that if anyone needs any additional support during this time, they look at the resources provided below in the YouTube link and at the beginning slide. And if you or a loved one needs any additional support during this time, we have these resources available for your assistance. I want to leave it on a final note that I feel like we will make it through this together. I hope that you will all take care of yourselves and that we can take care of one another. Advice that I live with is to remember to put on your own oxygen mask before you can anybody else's. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself first so that you can take care of those around you. So be well, be safe, and love one another. Students, on behalf of Chandler-Gilbert Community College, I thank you for your time. Audience, I thank you for your time as well. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you and good night.